Thompson Productions.
It was a layered operation that achieved many objectives, but it facilitated the growth of the state as well. And it facilitated that path of the dystopian nightmare, and the violation of our inherent rights. So that was an inherent example of the federal government's abuse of power.
Oh, Father, tell me, do we get what we deserve? Oh, we get what we deserve.
Holy cow. About a third of the building has been blown away.
And way down we go. Oh, way down we go. Say way down we go. And way down we go. Oh, 'cause they will run you down to the dark. Yes, then they will run you down till you fall. Oh, and they will run you down till you go. Yeah, till you can't crawl no more.
Hey, welcome to another episode of No Way Jose. Today I am joined by Ken Silva. We're coming to you with some unfortunate news, and also we figured we'd take this opportunity to give you some other Oklahoma City bombing updates. There have been some new things to kind of add this to the Oklahoma City bombing playlist. But before we get into it, I do want to take a moment to let you guys know that if you want to support the show and if you want to get a superior shaving product, good way to do that is Nadeau Shave Co. Use Jose at checkout for 10% off. This is much preferable to those multi-blade nonsense razors out there. It gives you a much smoother shave with only one razor, and this one razor you're dragging across your face, your skin is gonna thank you. Much better for it, and it's cheaper. It's $75 for the first year. After that, you're just buying the razors. So I mean, that really even depends on how long the razors last you. $100 for the first year plus the handle you see here. And then after that, just razors, and you get 10% extra if you use Jose at checkout. This is also a COVID mandate refusing company. This is a company that aligns with the values of people who are likely going to watch this show. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Use Jose at checkout, get 10% off. With that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and get Ken in here and get into it. What's up, man? Long time no see.
Yeah, it has. It's been at least probably 6 months since I've been on this show. So yeah, good to be back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still covering you regularly now. I've adopted a morning show, so I do. Your articles come up quite frequently, but it's good to have you back. It's kind of your profile's grown significantly since the last time we came. I was kind of like, holy moly! So it's good to see good people getting recognition. You're kind of like on the short list of people that I do try to shout out in the realm of stuff that me and you are interested in. So it's cool to see people moving on up. So hell, you're the editor-in-chief over at Headline, so that's news since the last time. You're your own editor-in-chief now, so I mean that's more responsibility. So but yeah, how's that treating you? I mean, if there's anything else you want to mention to my audience about yourself in the meantime. But I know it's been cool seeing the stuff you've been doing. You've been breaking a lot of big stories and receiving the due recognition for it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I do turn into your morning show quite frequently, and hear you talk about my articles and always appreciate that. We're making changes at Headline USA. I took over as editor about 2 months ago from a good friend of mine, Ben Sellers, who hired me. Got nothing but good things to say about him, but we've kind of changed the editorial stance from more like a mainstream MAGA pro-Trump site to hardcore paleo-libertarian / conservative or right wing, if you want to say that, but we're going hard against, the Trump administration when they mess up, unlike any other sites. We're running antiwar.com articles, thanks to Scott Horton's blessing. So you can find Dave DeCamp, Kyle Anzalone, and we just hired a new deputy editor to work with me, Jose Nino. I think a lot of your viewers might be familiar with that name. He's done some work for the Libertarian Institute and Mises, and really smart guy. Just gonna make him a hardcore journalist too.
Yep, he's a name I've heard around for a while. He's definitely been in these circles for a hot minute. But as I said, we have a few things I want to get through, a handful of little updates, new things in the story that I feel like anyone who really does want to have a grip of this story, an ongoing understanding that these are new developments that I think you need to know. And namely, probably we'll probably just go ahead and get right into the main one, which is what brought us here today. And it just kind of was like, hey, there was a few other things I feel like we should mention. But I guess Carol Howe, which for those, we did cover this in the series a little bit. I figured we'd take a moment to kind of cover her story again real quick. Just so, may as well use the opportunity to kind of tell her story. But it looks like she likely perished recently because I think it's a kind of up in the air whether she actually went to witness protection, but essentially she's one of those characters that just disappeared for a while, and then now the next thing we hear of her, she's dead. It's one of those characters that I think a lot of us Oklahoma City researcher types have kind of hoped was going to be alongside something like a surveillance tape to just pop out of the woods one day and be like, I'm ready to talk, or here I am. But this is the here I am we get. Here I am, I'm dead. So that's a little bit bummer. From my understanding of the story, she's a little bit hero, but obviously there are different sides to the story, which I'm sure we'll get into later as well. But I'll pass it off to you to just kind of give us the latest in what's going on with Carol Howe.
Yeah, for those who don't know, she was kind of a troubled child, like a wild child in the 80s. Good-looking teenage girl, eventually gets in with the wrong crowd. I think she claims that she got beat up by some black people, and that's why she got, attracted to Nazism and starts hanging out with like the neo-Nazis like Dennis Mahon. Makes her way to Elohim City. She's from Tulsa. And while there, she gets kind of like a front row seat to, what we think is, plotting of the Oklahoma City bombing. And we know for a fact that she warned her handler in, I think, January 95, that a guy named Andreas Strosmeire and Dennis Mahon and a couple other neo-Nazis were casing federal buildings in Oklahoma and that an attack was impending. And the reason that we know this for sure is because after the bombing happens, Carol Howe starts talking about it, and the DOJ charges her with having explosive material. We think probably as retaliation and to shut her up and to prevent her from possibly testifying at Terry Nichols' trial, which I think she did anyways. But in any event, at her trial, her handler agent was called to testify, and the handler agent confirmed under oath that, yes, Carol did tell me in January that Nazis were casing federal buildings. So in that regard, she's highly credible. It's a really sad story. After she beat the charges, she kind of just dropped off the grid. Like a journalist named John Ronson, who people might know. I think he and Alex Jones were the ones to go into the Bohemian Grove in the late 90s. So,
was he?
Yeah, he's a longtime conspiracy guy. That's Ronson.
That just made a few things click in my conspiracy mind. But go on.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'll be curious on your thoughts for sure. But yeah, so he did a podcast.
Just solidified my position, and you think
and he's a spook. Yeah. So yeah, he did a podcast 2 years ago about Carol Howe that's got some interesting information, but ultimately concludes that Carol Howe's not credible, which, he talked to somebody like Richard Booth. We highly disagree with that. But to Ronson's credit, he's the one that discovered that apparently Carol Howe died in January in a house fire. And he put out a new episode that I just listened to today that's got a lot of good info in it. Some negative, but some really interesting that actually corroborates Howe's credibility.
Was this so? He did drop. You said he dropped some new content, and this was what, after or before? Like after the revelation.
So he did an episode or a whole series in 2023.
Yes, the debutante, right?
And then this month, I think just today, or at least I listened to it today. It was like he did a epilogue type episode where he talks about how she died, like the months leading up to the death. Some people who knew her in Tennessee, like in recent years, like there's some pretty interesting stuff there.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. I'll have to go check that out. It wasn't where I heard epilogue being referred to, but I thought that was literally probably the epilogue for his previously written or previous story, The Debutante, which I believe you're referring to, which is the Carol Howe story, which I find to be quite ludicrous. I'm pretty sure I was very close to almost doing a whole episode with Richard just to be like, point out all the ludicrous things in it. Not going to get to it now. I don't even remember any specific things, but it basically was the absurd position of coming away from this and thinking I should take Andy's word for it and not Carol Howe's. But just saying. But anyways, yeah. So she, I guess. So she died. You said it was a house fire. Is what we're understanding. Was it that the current understanding is?
That's right. And yeah, this is brand new news. So I've yet to investigate this. I filed FOIAs with the ATF and the FBI for her records now that she's deceased. And I'm planning on doing similar searches with the local fire department, get the incident report. So I'll have more to share, hopefully. And if any other researchers want to beat me to that, fine. I'm plenty busy. I would please somebody scoop me, so I don't have to do the work.
Yeah.
But and by the way, the ATF already denied my request. So this is interesting. I could break this news.
Yeah.
I filed it this morning and they responded in the afternoon saying, we're denying it. You need to prove that Carol Howe is dead. Otherwise, we might be violating her privacy rights. So they're not taking the report's word for it. I don't know if it's a stonewalling tactic or bureaucracy, but in any event, it got somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, she dies in the house fire, but the podcast goes into like, she really seemed to spiral into severe paranoia, where in the years leading up to her death, she was pretty much a shut-in. She would even like smoke cigarettes in like a little stowaway department, like under her house. She wouldn't go outside, probably a little bit schizophrenic. And the question is, were people actually still messing with her, or was she just spiraling into mental illness?
I mean, it's not paranoid if it's true.
That's exactly right. And to Ronson's credit, he does leave that open. Apparently, so this is interesting. She made a friends with like a local tough guy who would like fix her car at like 10 at night because, again, she's a shut-in, doesn't want to let anybody in her house. She wouldn't even take out the trash because she thought that somebody would take the DNA. By the way, I think we forgot to mention she was living under an assumed name. Well, Sarah, what's the name? Sarah Collins.
Yeah.
So yeah, she wouldn't even take out the trash because she's worried that they might get her DNA and figure out it's really Howe. At one point, she's in the backyard with the guy, and she says, "Hey, get down!" And she thinks somebody's watching them, and they crawl back to the house. She told the guy that she had infiltrated like Muslim extremist groups ahead of the 2012 Boston bombing. So it seems like she kind of wanted to get the psychological baggage off her chest without telling the guy like who she really was. Like it is interesting.
That or she did more. I mean, I doubt it, but it's like, I guess it's possible.
She was infiltrating Arab groups. I think it was just like a twisting the facts to, for psychological reasons.
I guess that would make sense. If she did feel the need, she wanted to confide in someone and have someone to, you can't say it because then obviously I don't know, she's pretty fucking famous. So it's like I don't know, I guess most people would have no idea. I mean, unless you're like one of the handful of researchers out there. But still, even then, you wouldn't be too hard to put two and two together. So I guess I get that. But it is still, man, that is weird. I mean,
yeah, so she believed she was being watched by the feds up till her death. And again, there are definite signs of mental illness. I mean, I would say going all the way back to when she was a teenager, probably. But, she's been credible on so many things that like we can't definitely dismiss it. We gotta, I'll still be investigating and look closely at the fire report and everything like that.
I mean, people, and also given the context of this story, where you have Terrence Hickey, Kenneth Trentadue, Michael Loudenslonger, Dr. Chum Lee, Aiden Gillis? No, not Aiden Gillis. I forget his name. Gillis Parker. I forget the Richard Lee Guthrie. Like, it's just like we can just rattle off name. So it is I don't know, the Mueller murders. Like, it's not that crazy.
Keep in mind, we're coming up on when she died, it was months ahead of the 30th anniversary of the bombing.
It was
But
January
it was
6th.
it was the 30th anniversary of her informing on the bombing.
Oof.
So yeah, take, do that what you will. One of the most interesting things from Ronson's podcast was that her cousin Lucy, who had a lot of bad things to say about Carol, but did confirm that Carol definitely saw McVeigh before the bombing. So Lucy tells a story that it's the Christmas in '94, so 4 months ahead of time. And her grandma just died, and the grandma's like maiden name or middle name was McVeigh. And so she's like, okay, I'm going to name my kid's middle name McVeigh to honor my grandma. And Carol just goes like, you're not going to want to do that. And so that comes from the cousin that hates Carol, but she admits that, well, in this regard, she definitely called it, because when the bombing happens a couple months later, the cousin freaks the hell out. So that's another really juicy drop in Ronson's podcast.
That is interesting. I mean, I guess that just all that does is emphasize the level of, I don't know, foreboding, I guess she had, essentially, because she had already warned him about it. I mean, she had we mentioned earlier, the multiple occasions, which you can go look at the files, see the transcripts that say this, where it's, her reporting on we're going with Dennis Mahon and Strosmeire multiple times to I believe case the courthouse and the federal buildings, if I recall correctly. Yeah. So, and other buildings as well. So it's yeah.
And her specific comment about McVeigh is interesting too, because we didn't have I don't think there's any actual smoking gun that says that she definitely saw him. I knew, if you listen to the full Debutante podcast, there's a lot of she changes her story, and there's conflicting reports on whether she may have saw somebody named Tim Tuttle or not. But the cousin's story is very compelling to me.
Yeah, she, if I recall correctly, I believe, didn't she think, I believe she thought that the John Doe 1 sketch was one of the Ward brothers. Initially.
Pete Ward, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, so that as if you're trying to look for identifying McVeigh, I mean, it's weird she says it 2 months later. But the point I was going to try about is just kind of obviously she knew that they were visiting, but it's we didn't really have an idea of to what degree she was concerned. Was it just oh, you saw this? But obviously, if 2 months ahead she's mentioning, oh, don't name McVeigh, it's kind of oh, shit, something else is going on here. Or she has she probably has more information. So there definitely is probably more we don't know of. But man, yeah, this is interesting. So I guess there'll probably be more to come on this. I mean, I don't know if there's anything particularly in the vein of Carol Howe that you feel like we should mention at this point. I think for anyone that's ignorant of everything, I think we kind of gave the main beat. She became an informant in Elohim City. Elohim City is obviously where we kind of purport that the ARA kind of set up their home base, and there are an assortment of between that group of ARA. There are an assortment of different ways that we can connect McVeigh to that group. So I mean, kind of to just a quick and dirty for people, but obviously then Carol Howe being the informant that we're talking about here. So just kind of a quick rundown in case I forgot anything so far as the basics for new people jumping on board, but. Yeah, is there anything else in the vein of her before we move on to other updates? Because I can't think of anything else. Go ahead.
For people who are interested in Carol Howe, if they don't want to buy John Ronson's podcast on Audible, there's also a TV show that came out 2 years ago that's pretty good. It's the second season of the Waco series for Showtime. It's Waco: The Aftermath, which leads up to the OKC bomb, and it has Carol Howe at Elohim City seeing McVeigh and Strosmeire planning it. The show's not perfect because it leaves out John Doe 2 and a bunch of other stuff, but it's really entertaining. And if people don't want to dig into a book or an article or a podcast, I would recommend that. Last thing I'll say, speaking of Strosmeire, longtime listeners know that I interviewed him 2 years ago when that show about Carol Howe came out, and he obviously called Carol Howe crazy, said she made up everything. And I do an article on Strosmeire responding to the show and how it depicted him and Carol Howe. After that, he stopped responding to my messages, just totally. I thought Strosmeire got pissed off at my article and just decided to cut me off totally. But when Carol died today, I messaged him, and he responded right away. So that shows you how much he hates Carol. He's probably having champagne right now. And so he gave me a really interesting quote. If I could find it, maybe you have it, Jose.
Okay, what quote's this?
Just what he told me today.
Oh yeah, give me a second. I'll bring it right up.
Okay, so he responds. I said Carol Howe died, and he goes, karma, or is somebody covering his tracks? It's a weird thing to say. And then he says, finishes, Howe played an essential part in the conspiracy to frame innocent people for the OK City bombing. It's like, okay, well, she didn't frame anybody because nobody got charged for it. Nobody outside of McVeigh. That's kind of a weird thing to say. Karma or somebody covering his tracks.
Yeah, it is a weird thing to say. It does. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously we can get super conspiratorial. I don't know to a degree Andy would even be in the know if there was some conspiratorial something. I think he just probably is being glib and is probably obviously that's his stance. So whatever. Like you said, you did interview him a while back, which that is a little bit of an update. I don't think we've really covered that on there. I just figured we'd take obviously he disagrees. So, and the Ronson, it seemed Ronson bit onto this narrative because as we mentioned earlier in the debutante, he does seem to kind of fall into that line of thinking. I believe he even goes into like some of the Godiva like strip club stories and some of the other different tales out there, some of the sources people point to, and tried to tear him down. It very much was like a debunking type of podcast, it felt like, and then a lot of those ended up failing. Richard did a good job when that happened of slapping a lot of those things down and be like, no, you're wrong. So this was very much seemed to be a podcast to, I don't know, back up his narrative for some weird reason. So I guess just any thoughts with that? You did just recently release the full interview for those who want to check it out. You do have an article on it, so if those who want to get the key takeaways. But is there anything in particular you feel like is worth mentioning that, his take on things? Obviously, we've kind of alluded to it already that, he didn't do nothing type thing. I mean, even for those who are really deep researchers and know the what's typically referred to as the damning statement he made to Pritchard, which actually actually didn't finish the book, but I'm done with the OKC portion of that book. But in there he like basically does what a lot of people refer to as essentially his what's the word? Why can't I think of the word where you admit to doing something wrong? His confession. Essentially, a lot of people think that was essentially his confession, but in like a OJ, like, what if I did it type way. But he even pushes back on that and says that Pritchard won't ever, and wants Pritchard to produce the tapes. So, which I will give him the slightest bit of credit to that, to where it's like, hey, Pritchard probably should release the tapes, and him not releasing the tapes does kind of look bad and kind of does give to, Andy's point, that like, hey, this is just some dude somewhere saying something, because that's kind of all it is right now. Yeah. So unfortunately, I wish Pritchard would release it, because then it would be far more than some dude saying something, and that little bit is pretty damning. So I don't know, any thoughts on just kind of his I don't know, stances on all this, or any of the like, really?
Yeah, I got to give it to him when the criticism of Pritchard seems valid to me.
Yeah.
And if you go look back at that book, I guess it might be fresher in your memory, but the dialogue does seem a little too perfect, where like at the end, Strosmeire supposedly goes like, Shiza, and like, hangs up the phone or something. It's like, really? Like, that doesn't sound, that sounds a little too like scripted.
I guess you'd have a better read of how he talks than, but yeah, that doesn't, now after having heard him audio a few times, I feel like, that would be weird for him to say. I don't feel like he would speak German English like that. I don't know. That seems too cheesy. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell. Yeah, I mean, it does seem almost too good to be true. And then we have the person that it was aimed at saying, hey, release it, and the journalist not releasing it. So I don't know. I don't know enough about Rick Pritchard's work to really be willing to accept that, like, it's that his word is that, golden, that I'm willing to take it. I don't know. Maybe he's an amazing journalist and he's never lied ever, or been wrong, but it seems kind of a wild thing to just take on faith. So that is fair on Andy's point. As much as I want to just nail him to the wall, it is that point is pretty fair.
Yeah, I think so. And that's, Pritchard is really highly regarded with some of the OGs, like Kathy Sanders loves Pritchard. So I'm not going to disparage the guy. He should release the tapes, though. What Andy told me is that this is really interesting because it lines up with what one of his buddies has said, that he thought that the McVeigh pulled the whole operation was for McVeigh to pull the truck into the building where ATF agents were like downstairs in the parking garage ready to arrest him, but the truck was too big to fit. That's what he told me. You can go check out the interview. It's on tape. And that lines up with what one of his buddies, Dave Holloway, told somebody who informed to the FBI. It came out in a 302 report. Who is Dave Holloway? He's the guy who helped Strosmeire escape the country. They crossed the border into Mexico and then I think flew up to Belgium or something, took the train down to Germany.
Where do you learn to fly, Ken?
What's that?
Where do you learn to fly, Ken? Where do you learn to fly?
Well, that's the thing. So Holloway is also a CIA pilot. Mm-hmm. And this was a finding that our Twitter hero Boltzmann Booty found maybe like 4 years ago. Pretty brand new news as far as Oklahoma City bombing lore goes. And so I asked Strosmeire, I think I caught him off guard. I said, did you know your buddy Holloway was in the CIA, or he purports to be? And Strosmeire was like, oh, yeah, he did. He flew for Air America, which is like kind of just a shorthand for Air America was a CIA front that, shipped a lot of guns and drugs during Iran-Contra.
Yep.
And that's a big admission to me that Strosmeire knew that at the time that he's hanging out with him in the early 90s while PatCon's going down. He didn't give me any more beyond that. I said, well, don't you think that's odd or significant? And he just said, no, not really. Like, a lot of military guys are in this circles. So.
McVeigh was slinging, purportedly was slinging, guns to Cuban exiles for Roger Moore as well. So, I mean,
and I want to bring that up real quick. I don't want to go too far off into a tangent, but I watched the Oklahoma City April 19th documentary on HBO, and one of the authors, Stuart Wright, who wrote a book like not the politics of terror, but a similar titled book about the bombing, said that McVeigh was doing straw purchases on the gun show circuit for the Nazis, where he would buy guns legally and then give them to people who can't legally own them, which that's what Operation Fast and Furious was all about. And we know that Operation Fast and Furious originated with PatCon. We know that because of John Matthews and Jesse Trentadue. Mm-hmm. They say like it was running out of the Lone Wolf gun store, which was later in 2011 involved in Fast and Furious. So the reason I bring this up is because that tells me that, McVeigh probably was a Fed, if that's true, that he's making straw purchases while for like this prelude to Fast and Furious. I just thought that was super fascinating.
Can you imagine? Obviously, it's incredibly speculative, but I believe it was, and I think I know Richard's mentioned before, and I believe this is information that I believe is coming out in Margaret's new book, Margaret Roberts. So I think we'll get the specific source. There's so many books always coming out. I hate it when I have to do like source it as like, oh yeah, it's coming out in a book soon. But okay, it's coming out in a book soon. And I swear there was God dang it, I totally lost my train of thought. What the hell? What was I talking about?
I mentioned Strosmeire.
Oh! I was thinking. I mentioned there was something in there that they mentioned in passing that I think is getting ready to drop in that book. That implies there was a PatCon element to Waco, which I know has been referenced before by John Matthews. But I believe there's going to be some sort of source that heavily more implies it's something to do with, essentially, I'm believing some sort of outside, force or something. It sounds like maybe the implication is giving some sort of legal precedent to do whatever. So obviously, like straw purchases, and he was at Waco, so it's like. Yeah. Could you imagine if it was like literally we come to find out it was McVeigh is the dude that was like created the legal precedent for Waco?
Seriously, man. No, that's a perfectly reasonable conclusion or speculation to make. So the story there is that according to John Matthews, there was intelligence coming into the FBI that the militias were going to resupply the Davidians or possibly even attack the feds. And they were worried that, we've had this perimeter set up for going on 58 days. We're susceptible to an outside attack from the militia. We got to wrap up this operation soon. And if that was just John Matthews telling Jesse Trentadue that's okay. One source, random hearsay. But Richard Booth this is on Scott Horton's 6-hour Waco podcast, but Richard Booth picked up on it. That this book, This Is Not an Assault, it contains the same info that apparently the FBI was worried about the militias at the time. So it corroborates what Matthews told Trentadue, that yes, the PatCon was very tied into Waco and was the reason that they moved in and stopped the standoff and decided to just go in.
All right. Well, geez, especially if the angles that they were concerned about others come in, that actually leads. He was there, and all you need is to prove some sort of criminal element. Maybe they could even, we have this criminal element militia moving in, and all you have to do is point to something he did. And obviously, if he's their asset, it's pretty easy to point to things he's done. So, all right, yeah, wild. I don't know. I just never put that together. It's kind of been swirling in my head that I'm surprised that connection hasn't been made. But that is interesting. That is obviously, probably isn't the case, but there's an outside possibility that is the case, that McVeigh.
Well, and Wendy Painting's done a lot of research on one of the Davidians did business with Roger Moore or something like that. So there is that added tie.
All right. Shit. Okay. I didn't know that. I feel like maybe I've heard that before, but I guess maybe it was one of those things that now hearing it in a different light, I'm like, oh, okay.
A lot of connections. Yeah. This really needs to be a 10 season TV show. It is just a crazy story.
Well, all right, let's I guess move into some more of the other updates. I'd say probably the other major one that maybe I'm forgetting something, but I think we've already kind of naturally hit a few of the ones that we intended to. But I think the other one would be where things currently stand with Jesse's case. I know he did recently. I guess we haven't even covered this on the show, or at least on the playlist. So for those, just going through the playlist trying to figure out, we didn't actually talk about. He did, a while back, put up a new FOIA lawsuit for specific. You probably have a better recall of that if you want to give the specifics on that one. I think I may have done an episode on it or something, but I don't think it was in the playlist. Or it may have been one of the morning shows. But either way, you just kind of, if you could give a breakdown for them where that is at, and then there's also movement on the. I mean, I say movement, but not really an attempted movement on the gag order side of things when that comes to the John Matthews, PatCon stuff, all the stuff that's sealed. That's kind of, a lot of us are kind of like, what the hell? But there also was a newer one that happened before this. So I guess it probably makes sense to go in chronological order. So if we could just start with the previous action, I guess, not the last one, but the one before that, the one in reference to kind of starting a new FOIA lawsuit, because essentially it made FOIA requests something in the realm of, I believe, 7 years prior or something along those lines. And so it's kind of like, all right, you've had your time. Now I'm filing suit. Yeah,
the more recent one was filed in February 24. And that was for all of its records about McVeigh, the FBI's investigation into the McVeigh's ties to the Aryan Republican Army, which was these neo-Nazi bank robbers hanging out at Elohim City, robbing banks to fund a right-wing revolution and probably funding the bombing. So that was one of the requests. And the other one was for all the FBI's requests or files on Roger Moore. Jesse Trentadue originally requested these in 2016, and he didn't sue for so many years because he's fighting this other lawsuit. He was planning on filing suit when the other one wraps up, but he realizes that this other one might never wrap up. So he wanted to, do it while he's capable. And that one has been dragging along. The FBI has produced literally 2 records a month. It's pretty pitiful. So there's going to be a lot of news in the coming months about just the FBI and what a terrible job they're doing with transparency there. More importantly, I would say, though, is this long 15-year lawsuit where he originally sued for the surveillance footage of McVeigh and, according to reports, John Doe 2 pulling the Ryder truck, going away, it explodes. It would have proved the existence of John Doe 2. That lawsuit is so complex, but basically just spins out until the FBI gets caught lying about so many things that the judge actually says, okay, we're going to trial. Like FOIA lawsuits never go to trial. Usually the FBI could just swear that, oh, we don't have these records and the case will get tossed. But Jesse has all these records showing that, yes, the surveillance footage exists. So the judge gets fed up and he goes to trial. One of the people that was going to testify for Trentadue was an FBI informant named John Matthews. He had blown the whistle on Pat Kahn, come out 2 years earlier, did an article for Newsweek that didn't really show any of the juicy stuff. So he's going to lay it all out in Trentadue's trial in 2014. But the night before he's going to testify, he calls Trentadue and Roger Charles and changes his mind and says, according to Trentadue, that the FBI is threatening me, telling me I better not testify, and if I do, I better have a case of the I don't remembers. That pisses off Trentadue. He alleges he alleges witness tampering. The judge, to his eternal credit, agrees with Trentadue that that's a serious allegation. The judge appoints a separate judge called like a special master to investigate this one issue of witness tampering. And that's been going on for 10 years now, behind closed doors with gag orders on all parties. That brings us to now, where ahead of the 30th anniversary, Trentadue motioned for either the judge or the special masters to unseal John Matthews' depositions, which we don't know what are in the depositions because Trentadue can't talk about that, but presumably it's about all the stuff that Trentadue says that he's been talking about, about how it ties into Waco, how he saw McVeigh and Strosmeire hanging out in 94, all this incredibly damning stuff, some of the biggest scandals in the FBI's history. Trentadue asked the judge to unseal it, and Trump's DOJ has opposed that motion. That's the big news. And not only Trump's DOJ, it's not the U.S. attorney in Utah that's doing this. It was the number 2 guy, the acting deputy attorney general at the time. I think they finally appointed the permanent one, got approved by the Senate. But the acting guy, Yakov Roth is his name. He made an appearance, or like it's under his name that they're opposing Trentadue's motion. So to me, this is like a huge scandal. It's an indictment on the whole Trump administration and all this bullshit about JFK and the Epstein files. Yep. Well, why are you opposing Trentadue? Like, this is egregious, and this is something that should be like Tucker Carlson needs to be talking about this. It's just ridiculous.
100%. I agree. I mean, I've tried to elevate this as much as I can because it's one of those stories like, how the fuck is everyone not talking about this? This is insane. It's the 30th anniversary. I mean, when you really dig into it, it is nuts. I mean, this is what turned my show from a libertarian theory show into a parapolitics show. It is just you find yourself spiraling around and around and around and around it because it is insane. And it's just like, how is no one looking at this? How is no one looking at this? It does feel like it got overshadowed by like maybe like 9/11 or something. But it is one of those ones. It's like, this is pretty glaring, pretty obvious. So you said it's Yakov Roth. So he was essentially at the time Bondi's number 2 is what you're. So
yep, he's the head of the civil division too, which is like the whole department that fights all these civil lawsuits and FOIA lawsuits. So even now he's still top 10, top 5 guy at DOJ. Okay,
so the most transparent administration, got it. Okay, on that side, I'm trying to think there was something in there. Okay, so we have. I had one question. This is something I've always never really got the chance to ask or just kind of. So this thing is gag order. You even said to their credit and all that, but it's been basically almost 15 years that it's been under a gag order. Are you aware? Obviously, I don't know if this would be betraying the gag order if Jesse's told you or something. But I mean, maybe you could say that you just know these are how these things would work. But I know even then the special master concept is something that's so rare. I don't even think Jesse's even heard of it happening before. But point being, what I'm driving at is like, are there like behind closed doors, legal proceedings that are occurring that we don't know of, or is this just literally nothing's happening, and it's
I,
just like, you know what I mean? Like,
I
what the
mean,
fuck is going on?
things are happening. All that
Yeah.
Jesse will tell me is that the DOJ and the FBI have fought him, quote, tooth and nail every step of the way. And I can only assume that means like he wants to depose somebody in the FBI. They don't show up on the date of the deposition. Oh, we got to move it off. Oh, this guy, he actually moved to a different department. We got to delay it more. Just all the dirty tricks in the book. That's the sense that I get. But
these are probably all the things he's gagged to not be able to talk about, that like all the untoward actions that are probably occurring.
I would hold out hope, though. Actually, the first, I'm aware of another special master situation that was the biggest story I ever covered at the time. This was 2019, before I got into any of this stuff. I was like a tech reporter for a publication called Global Data Review in London. It was like the most basic, boring tech reporting you could imagine. But I stumbled across this case where this health company got hacked by a contractor who had FBI spyware. He was like an FBI contractor with spyware, and he was just a bad guy. So he hacks this company, and then he tries to blackmail the guy to get the information back. And the guy turned out to be a Jesse Trentadue type character and says like, no, fuck you. So the FBI contractor gives the information to the FTC, which then opens an investigation again into this health company. And it sparks like 10 years of litigation. Eventually, it goes to a special master, which found that, yes, the FBI contractor used proprietary spyware and colluded with the FTC to screw this guy over. And the special master's report was just like the most salacious thing I had ever read at the time. So these things do take time, but from my limited experience, which I guess is more than most everybody else because nobody's even heard of a special master, it can produce really good things.
Okay, well that could be interesting because I mean, as I'm thinking like what this is, you're like, oh, so there's likely multiple court proceedings going on behind. So like theoretically, the moment that he gets ungagged, we're probably gonna have an insane yarn of like crazy shit they did through the legal proceedings, which I mean we already have a ton of crazy stuff. I know Richard wrote a great article on this a while back, essentially going into the ins and outs of the specifics of Kenneth's or of Jesse's court proceedings, which it is insane when you go through there and see some of the things the feds have done, specifically in regards to him, like hell, even to the point to where he was finding like essentially internal documents that were saying that they literally had like institutionalized Kenneth or Jesse Trendadue's and don'ts through what's his face, the Fast and Furious guy, the not Garland but the other Attorney General, the black guy, Holder. Yeah,
it's skipping my mind too. But
but Eric Holder, I believe. Yeah, so
Eric Holder.
Yes. I don't know if there's a question there, but yeah, and it just. Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that because then I was trying to remember who the Eric Holder's name was. But yeah, anyways, the point being is, yeah, they institutionalize it to that degree. So I just can only imagine the revelations we will have. Now, I guess one last question, then maybe if there's any other updates you can think of that would be worthwhile bringing up. I guess just do you have any sort of idea? Obviously, Jesse is getting older in age. I was just thinking about this today. And I have noticed it seems like there's a stirring of the Jesse right now. I've noticed he's re-entered the public eye. So it just feels like either to me one of two things is happening. Either he knows something's going on, or he thinks he can make something happen, so he's trying to shake up some waves, or he might be getting damn near ready to say fuck it and like just I don't know, do some cowboy stuff. So my only point is like, are you aware of like in situations with gag orders, like you gotta think you theoretically I could just tell you and then just essentially you pull a David Paul Hammer and go like tell everybody else, but just say wink wink kind of whatever type deal. Like, do you know like what would be any sort of consequences for something like that? Because it would be, I would assume he would have at the very least have the stuff written down somewhere for the moment that he's gone. That the way this information doesn't just disappear into the wind.
Yeah, my guess is that he has kill switches, but he's a careful guy. I don't think he's going rogue at all. I mean,
No.
he's got this is a guy that could have been, a federal judge, like highly successful lawyer. He's towing a fine line for sure, but I think he's doing it properly. And he talked on Scott Horton's show, like JD Cash, his death was unexpected. Roger Charles, I mean, I interviewed Roger Charles in February of 22, and he died like 3 weeks later. I was worried that, oh shit, did I have like COVID and did I accidentally give it to him? Like, no, I guess nobody really saw that coming, even though he had been kind of going downhill like a long term. So I think Jesse just wants to talk and get this news out, while he can, just in case something happens. So that's what he told Scott, and I think that's the truth.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not at all concerned about him. He seems pretty spry, and I think he's probably got at least a decade left.
His anger will continue to carry him on for another 20 years, dude.
Yeah. Well, all right, Ken, is there anything else you feel like my audience should be aware of? I guess, bear in mind, I think the last time I've even done, well, no, I had the Jonathan Franklin episode that we did, so we had a little bit, I guess, catching up on some stuff. But I guess, is there anything you think of in the realms of so far as updates? I might be missing something. I know there was an article about the John Ashcroft thing that I covered in the morning show. I don't know to what recall you have of that, or if like that's even really too worth going into. That was pretty interesting revelations. That was very in the weeds, though. Something specific when it came to Terry Nichols and I guess essentially keeping him quiet and how it seems like he may have avoided the death penalty. But anyways, just anything in the realm of updates, new stuff. Otherwise, you can let people know where to find you. I know you have an upcoming book that I think you're working on, so I'm glad to see that. And hell, I know you have another book, like this one kind of fell into your lap. You've always kicked around the idea of doing like a kind of infiltration of the right wing book. So hell, this kind of works out perfectly. Have you a perfect little launching point? Obviously, this is going to be more catchy than the other one. I'll be honest, I'm more interested in the other one. But so far as like general public, let's be real, Trump assassination book's probably going to do more numbers. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, the Trump shooting, what the investigations missed and why it matters. I think of an ode to Roger Charles, Oklahoma. That's like the working title. Roger's book was Oklahoma City, what the investigation missed and why it matters. So hopefully I'll get that done by like June or July. The progress is happening, much like Jesse's lawsuit. It's slow and you're not seeing anything, but hopefully soon we'll have something big on that. And headlineusa.com, the best conservative news site in the country. Check it out.
Oh yeah, appreciate you coming on. For anyone who wants to support what I'm doing over here, make sure to leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, all that. What's going on? My camera's glitching out. You seen anything weird, or is that just me? Okay.
No, you look all right.
All right, that's weird. I guess it was just my end, just glitching out. But anyways, like, share, subscribe, comment. If you want to directly support the show, patreon.com/NoWayJose2020 is the way to do it. $2 the lowest level. That gives you early access to episodes. Like, for example, this one. This one's going to go out really quick, though, so don't use this as a marker. This is kind of news, so it'll probably go in a few days, but usually they stay weeks behind the paywall. Also, you get an ad-free RSS feed there. You also get priority, call-ins on Already Dead, which is my weekly call-in show. Also, give a big shout-out to my sponsors. That's my highest level, my patrons. Big shout-out to my co-host on Terragang, at TerragangToad. Also at AbrogateDs, at ZOVRECK, at _Infinzeal, Tim Tuttle, at Jolyon Klebold, Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine, Big fan of the show, Torn May, and then at INWARD Lover. With that, guys, we're going to get out of here. Love y'all. Bobo's pointing out, don't forget to pick up a t-shirt. Go to toplobster.com. I got the Yiki shirts, the Trentadue shirts, got No Way Jose shirts, got Operation Gladio shirts, and then Already Dead shirts. So go pick up some. With that, we're out of here. Thanks for joining us, Ken. We'll be sure to have you on again sometime soon. I mean, definitely to promote the book or something. But yeah, with that, we're going to go and get out of here. See you soon. Bye-bye.